And welcome back to GBS Morning Extra. If you have any comments, suggestions, or opinion, 21144 is the number. You can get to watch this very episode right now, live on Facebook and, of course, on YouTube as well. Our hashtag is GBS Morning Extra. Our Twitter handle is Kenya GBS. Today with me in studio, Rokino Koth and Victor Marende. The debate is fairly going on well, and when we took a short break, we had a very tough question there. Said who that the BBI is actually the handshake was the beginning of the end for the Jubilee as a party. And we took a short break and we had Marende on pause. Bwana Marende, why have such a reaction? Because clearly, before the handshake, Jubilee was at peace. After the handshake, we now see different factions.
Silence or silence does not mean there is no war. And we have to interrogate how Jubilee was formed. Though I wouldn't really want to get into how Jubilee was formed because I was a member of the NASA coalition.
Yes.
And majorly a member of the ODM party. But then I believed there was the beginning of Jubilee. But then as we talk about the beginning of Jubilee, my point of difference with my brother here was saying that the handshake was the beginning of the end of Jubilee. It means my brother does not understand the meaning and the definition of a handshake. And in this case, the point of agreement between the president and the Honorable Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga. Now, when the two came together, they had a 9-point agenda. So that from the first point, we talked about ethnic antagonism.
Yes.
Where we felt that as a nation, we've fought so much, we've had a lot of trouble, and that it was now time to solve this mess that comes up because I'm from tribe A and the other one is from tribe B or C. We talk about the lack of national ethos, and I believe as a country we've struggled with this for a while. And if we have an initiative that is able to address this, then we only need to appreciate the initiative instead of saying that it's the end of so and so. We talked about a third point on inclusivity. When we want to talk about inclusivity, then you say that we are dividing a party. Then it means that you don't want the unity that we are setting out to address. But then anyone who supports the initiative would realize that the points that we are talking about from ethnic antagonism to the fourth one on devolution, for example. And they have a proposal. We know it. The other guys on the other side are talking about a proposal, and they really want to kill devolution. But we are watching them keenly, because when you tell me that my county CI, for example, from the same jurisdiction, it will be a constituency. At the same time, it's a county. I don't understand what it is. I want to elect a member of parliament from the same jurisdiction. At the same time, I'm electing a senator from there. I'm electing a governor.
From there.
Then at the same time, you blinding me into another confusion, telling me that senator would be more powerful than that MP. Then what makes sense out of it?
Doesn't.
The same population electing two people. And you tell me, one is more powerful. One would be in the upper house.
Upper house and the
it doesn't make sense. And even when you talk about one being in the upper house and giving him veto powers, in the current constitution there is a guy who has the veto powers. The president has veto powers.
Has veto powers, yes.
So that when a bill is taken to the parliament, he can send it back.
But then the antagonism between the MPs and the senators, I mean, these things
it's not going to end.
And this current constitution has not really addressed that clearly, and that's why we are seeing the fight. Because
I'll tell you where it was addressed. But let me first address where it is not addressed in this bill. That I really didn't want to discuss. But then, in a way, I want to say something about it.
Yes.
When you tell me that senators veto powers, and you don't amend the Article 135 that talks about the powers of the president. Because it is the president who has the veto powers.
Yes.
So if you don't tamper with these powers, then you are putting the Senate in trouble with the president. That is one.
Yeah.
Now, you are talking about making senators an upper house, and you don't tell us the logic behind making the Senate a powerhouse. Yet they are elected within the same jurisdiction with the members of the parliament.
Yeah.
So it doesn't beat any logic to make someone up. It doesn't mean that as ODM we are against making Senate an upper house. Make Senate an upper house, but in a logical way.
With clear
definitions of what should happen.
Because what we've seen of late, many counties, and this is something that has been seen in the media, we've seen hospitals in counties not having funds. County governments unable to pay their own employees because when all the monies come, and now when it comes to the allocation of funds, then we have the Senate and the National Assembly at loggerheads over the amount of money that should go back.
I think the Constitution was very clear on this thing. However, Mike, the Constitution has never been that clear. On this, the Senate has a role. One is to protect the counties. Two is to ensure that they have enough allocation. That has never been the role of the parliament. But then we have men and women in parliament who believe that they're supreme and that they must talk about everything. In the world, you can never talk about everything. And you can never be everything.
And we saw that, Rokin, the Senate actually, I would say, conceded to this fight. And they decided to, okay, he who fights and run away lives to fight another day. And that almost, Murkomen was echoing the same words. And him and Senator Orengo actually made the speech when the Senate was actually agreeing and saying, okay, give the money, we concede, but we'll still look into the matter. What do you make of that?
The Senate and the Parliament were reduced themselves into some petty supremacy battles at the expense of working for the common mwananchi. And the Constitution is very clear. There is nothing obscure about the role of Senate. As he has rightly put it, the Senate has a role to ensure that the counties get resources, but you see, the same role is also played by the National Assembly. So the fact that they considered and came back to the 316.5 billion that was being suggested by the National Assembly, it means that they have no power. And it means that they considered that because they knew that they were not going anywhere.
But in their speech, Rokin, with all due respect, they said that they looked at the situation and it was bad. I mean, nothing was running in counties.
No, it is wrong to say that the Senate has no power. Let me just tell you something.
I saw even Honorable Orengo say that it seems, no, it was Murkomen, Honorable Murkomen said that it seems the National Assembly is not interested with helping the counties to develop. That's why we have decided to come to this conclusion.
Because they looked at the stalemate, which was not bearing
if
any
you
fruit.
are based, if your action is based on principle and is based on your work and role as a Senate, then why concede? Why concede?
Bwana Victor,
if it is based on
I'm looking at a situation where we are going back to what was happening in the country earlier when the Right Honorable Prime Minister and the President were at loggerheads over who is the duly elected president, and that led to the handshake. Of course, there had to be some concession. Someone had to concede something. Should they have held their ground? Should the Senate have held their ground on the matter?
Ceding ground in this case was the best thing to do. Because, number one, our county governments were now being paralyzed.
Yes.
And the main aim of having a government is service delivery. And when we have taxation without representation, then it doesn't make sense. So you tax us, but then value is not there. So I felt for the counties that had not paid their health workers, counties that could not pay KEMSA so that they would get drugs on time, counties that would not pay their workers. So to some extent, the Senate was right. What we only need to interrogate are the role of the constitutional bodies that we have. Because there is a commission for revenue allocation that speaks on the amount that must go to the county governments. So is this a commission that is there to earn salaries and their recommendations not taken into account?
And what is their mandate? And
So if then we define the role of the Commission for Revenue Allocation properly, and ensure that we abide by what they say, then as a nation we will progress. There had been a Supreme Court ruling on this same issue in 2013 that allowed the Senate to be part of the budget making process, because this was a part of making the budget. So if we are going to be a country that is not governed by the law, then we are not going to go anywhere. And I also blame the president on this, because the president must not be seen as an executive to be interfering with the legislature. But then the president comes to the public and says, you must take what is given. Then what is the role of the president? He must not infringe on the rights of the legislature. So he must allow.
On that, he seemed, and there was a lot of noise as well on the same. He seemed to have swayed on the side of the parliament. And we saw from parliament, some people having very, strong stands and which are being supported by Bonarokin, like, the likes of the majority leader, Eden Dwale, who stood his ground. And it's not the first time we are hearing such rhetoric from him. The famous "Hii pesa sio mama yenu" rhetoric from such leaders, elected leaders.
The principle of separation of powers guides us to respect the role of judiciary, executive, and even the legislature. The fact that the president came into this issue, and it's like he took side, it means that to some extent he is actually controlling the National Assembly in some extent. So the role of division of revenue, in the first place, the division of the Treasury came out with their figure. So did the Parliament, and the Senate also came up with their figure. So in my own opinion, I think our institutions have been weakened to the level that we don't have faith in these institutions. Whereby, if we have a Senate, for example, as an institution, or a body, or let me call it an institution in this country, then its role must be clear-cut, and it must not be seen to infringe on the roles of the National Parliament or National Assembly. At the same time, the role of Treasury must come out clearly in the question of division of revenue. We cannot have 3 or 4 different suggestions from different parties or institutions which seem to be at loggerhead, and the president at the same time comes in to weigh into the National Assembly and support the bill. And I think that's why even the National Assembly figure succeeded in this quest, because everybody in the devolved units, every county in this country wants enough resources at the county level. No county wants, every county wants resources, and it is incumbent upon the governors and even the leaders in the National Assembly and even the Senate to ensure that enough resources goes to the devolved units. So that's why even I support the issue of increasing the allocation to 45% in the devolved functions. So the confusion that came about in my own view was brought about by the fact that all these institutions seem to have a role in division of revenue. The Senate seemed to have a role, the National Assembly, at the same time, the Treasury, and even the President himself as an institution or even as a person, an individual. So this confusion can only be solved if only one institution is mandated to come out with a figure and to make sure that this figure succeeds. But if we have various voices from different sides of the house supporting or opposing this thing, then we will have a crisis the way we were almost plunging the country.
I think on what Rokin is saying, Bwana Victor, you mentioned this, that in 2013 there was a court ruling that say that the Senate should be part. But then to what extent? What was their role in being part? Being part is one thing, but what the clear definition? Because right now, I think, according to what Rokin is saying, if I can draw that, I somehow agree with him to some extent, that if the roles are clear, because there's also the Revenue Allocation Commission, and who plays what part, and at what point do we say now these are the guys who are on top who make the final decision?
You know, I think the constitution is what is not being implemented fully. Because if we implement the 2010 constitution fully, then we'll be able to solve all this. Number one, as much as the Senate has a role in the budget-making process, it is the one mandated by the Constitution to protect the county governments.
Yes.
At no given point was the National Assembly given such a role. When the National Assembly comes up to say that we are not going to give more money to county governments because the money given to the county governments is stolen, who gave them the role to oversight the county governments? If in any case, they need to oversight the national government, which they have not done. Because I understand that we lose almost 600 billion in a year to corruption.
Yes.
I think that is what they need to care most about on that oversight. But then on the oversight of the Senate, I also feel that the Constitution Implementation Commission and that was led by Nyachai did little to give us guidelines on what should happen. And when you tell the Senate that their role is to oversight the county governments, then they have no budget necessarily to audit the county governments. I think that was also a misgiving.
Yeah.
You don't give me a role without a budget to do it. Because you can't tell me that I'm earning a salary so that I go use it on my research team to audit the books, to see if the money is used appropriately. I think there must be a limit to which we also allow our elected members to do their roles, which the Senate so far has done so well. But then we have to be alive to the fact that the parliament is playing politics. They know the implications of sending more money to the county governments. They will lose their value. They will lose their value politically. If you speak as a politician,
yes,
they lose value for obvious reasons. They have CDF that they misuse. They do not do any development with it. And we have county governments that at least are trying to do something on the ground. We have county governments trying to set up industries.
Yes.
We have county governments trying to create job opportunities. We have county government trying to construct roads after a very long time in the country. So they know that if more allocation goes to the county governments, then these county governments would likely do more than they have done. And in turn, their weaknesses would be seen. So what is there to be done? Say there are more thieves in the county governments. Say they misuse that money.
Yeah.
You know, when you want to eat something, make it look so bad. Then when you come hitting it properly, then it will be like, but it was a devil. It was a devil. But so in return, they want to kill devolution. And this is how it started. In 1963, when we had Majimboism, Kenyatta used the parliament.
Yes.
Mzee Kenyatta used parliament to reverse the gains in the Majimbo government. And he threw out that system of governance.
Now, as much as we want to look at it, I mean, I would like us to look at a little bit more into this, and I don't know if time will allow us, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about the BBI politics. But on the same, you know, the matter was before Maraga and his team. And Maraga threw it back to the contending parties. You know, find an amicable solution. You guys sit down and talk. Some people were not really happy with that, the way that went, because, I mean, the outcome of it was, you know, the Senate ceding much ground to the National Assembly, whereas some people hoped that if the matter had gone to Maraga and his team, then they would have at least given direction, clear guide direction to the nation on the same.
You know, the confusion, as I said, arises from the roles of these institutions. That is the root. Let us direct the axe to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is ineffective institutions, which have people that do not care about their role and who have decided to just loot from the public coffers. And that's the truth. So long as we don't have clear-cut guidelines or roles of these institutions, then going forward into the future, this problem will come up again. in future.
So, are we saying,
that's why
would
I'm even supporting.
Would someone be allowed to say that, you know, the Chief Justice and his team or the judiciary failed in their part, or which their role constitutionally is to actually help interpret the Constitution?
No, they didn't fail. They did their part.
Which was?
They did their part. You know, the fact that the Council of Governors took this issue to the judiciary so that it may be interpreted for them. It means that they want the judiciary to interpret it for them, and they did that in 2013. So they have played their part. The National Assembly is also playing its part in their own view. The Senate is also playing its part, and so is the President and the Treasury. That's why I'm saying
that seem to not have
that's
ended.
why I'm saying. That's why even I'm supporting
because the Senate is
push
coming
for
back.
referendum.
The Senate, I
that's
think
why
they're setting themselves to come back and work on the issue. It's not done.
That's why I'm pushing. That's why I'm pushing. I'm pushing for a referendum, because you know, referendum, there are only around 3 issues that can make us go into a referendum. Changing of the terms of presidency, changing the structure and the functions of the devolved functions, or even changing the Bill of Rights of the people. So now that we are talking about devolved functions, to me, I feel like if we have a referendums, let us have suggestions or amendments in those bills that will actually address the issue of division of revenue towards the devolved units. Let them even talk about what I talked about earlier, the 45% share to the national government, to the county governments. Let them come out and say that the Senate or even the National Assembly is the only institution that is mandated to talk about issues of division of revenue to the county government.
So that we have a
so
clear
long as
cut,
we don't direct the axe to the root of the problem, we will never, going forward, solve this issue. We will politic, senators will come out, the treasury will have its figure, and so will the president come out.